Today we're talking, oh, that's so annoying. Let me take care of that real quick. Today we're talking edge banding, covering up that plywood edge. Now, if you've watched some of my videos, you know that I like the look of a plywood edge. Nice, nice, nice. But there's some situations where you just gotta cover it up. Edge banding. So here's how I usually do it. Again, if you've watched a few of my other videos, you know I like to keep it simple. So let's get to it. First of all, we need something to edge band. Like this. Gross, look at that plywood edge. And then we need something to edge band with. Like this. So my first step is to cut strips of walnut. I use my table saw just because it is the most precise tool I have in my shop. And if your fence is accurate and dialed in, this should be no problem. I've already flattened this piece and I have it just thicker than my plywood. My plywood's 3/4 inch, so this is like 13/16. But what I wanna do now is register my starting width on the table saw. So I set my fence just shy of the width of my board to make that first cut. And I want to make sure my fence is set on an actual ruler mark, and that becomes my starting point. Once I've made my first cut, I then move my fence in the width that I want my edge banding plus the width of my blade. So in my case, I want the edge banding to be a 1/16. My blade is 3/32, so I move in a 1/16 plus 3/32, and then make that second cut, which is my first actual strip of edge banding. And then I just repeat that process until I have as many as I need. I found that this method gives me the cleanest and most consistent results. Now that I have my strips cut, I need to trim them to meet at the mitered corner on the plywood. Since they're so thin, I make a sled instead of using my miter gauge. All I'm doing is taking a piece of plywood, screwing in a strip of wood that's 45 degrees to the edge, then I place each strip on there, cut that 45. Now once I have everything trimmed and cut, it's time to glue. I like to use painter's tape to clamp the edge banding. The exterior kind is slightly elastic, so it actually helps pull that edge banding into the plywood. There are all sorts of clamps and things you can buy to clamp edge banding onto plywood, but like I said earlier, I like to keep it simple. Once the glue is dried, it's time to trim everything flush with the router. I like to put a strip of tape along each edge. That way when I'm using the router, it eliminates or decreases any chance of the router cutting into the veneer. With the tape, it usually will leave the edge banding just a hair above the edge of the plywood, but that's easily sanded away. In this situation, I'm using the router table, but I often use a handheld router, say on a large piece. Same concept, just a different way of doing it. Wow, Sean, is that a solid piece of walnut? Actually, no, it's just edge banded plywood. So there you go, simple edge banding. Thumbs up for that. Thanks for watching, and if you have any suggestions or things you want to see me talk about in upcoming videos, let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think. But as always, keep those edges banded and that plywood looking good.